Hi, everybody. Lee Bodette, your host of the Test Drive podcast, also the host of Test Drive on the YouTube channel. Been a radio broadcaster for over 40 years. I'm the frontman host for Sport Car USA and a car enthusiast my entire life. Today, we're pleased to have Corey Parent from St. Albans. He's a former state senator. And Corey, I got to tell you, number one, welcome. And number two, you're still a really young guy. You've got quite a long resume. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, I grew up here in St. Albans, Lee. I grew up listening to you on WOKO. I was a big Toby Keith fan back in the day. Went off to St. Lawrence University, got a degree in economics and government. Head New York City for a bit, where I worked for Goldman Sachs in municipal finance, and then came home, got involved in politics. Like you said, I was lucky enough to serve 8 years in the state legislature, and including the last 4 as a state senator for the northwestern corner of Vermont. And, just got to a point where I got a young family. My son turns 5 tomorrow. Whoa. I've got a daughter that'll be 2 in October. And, just kind of all that running around, kind of put the politics aside and focus on, family life and, work on, make a living. They don't pay us too well in Vermont politics. So.
Yeah, and they say it's a part-time position, right? Being a state senator, but it's really not. You're heading to meetings all over the place, all different.
Yeah, I mean, it's part-time in the sense you're in Montpelier 4 months of the year, for those who don't know, or 5 years state capital, and then you still have projects throughout the year. A couple summers ago, once we were out so we could go work our regular jobs, I was there a couple days a week renegotiating pensions with state teachers and state employees. So it's not really that part-time of a job.
You have to have the right employer that will allow you to be away for so many months at a time.
Yeah, and you certainly strain and test their patience while you're doing that.
Right. Well, again, welcome. We're glad you're here. And, of course, Sport Car USA is one of my true loves. We buy and sell sport cars all over the country, modern muscle cars in particular. And you're a guy that loves cars as well.
Yeah.
Tell us your history as far as your first loving of the automobile.
Yeah, so it really goes back to my father. My father grew up in that 60s and 70s era. I can list off the cars he owned over the years. His 66 Chevelle, 68 Buick Grand Sport, 70 Hearse Olds. Just the cars that he grew up with, the pictures, the stories of he grew up in upstate New York, where the roads were wide open and there were cops few and far between. So, tell all these great stories. And, we grew up going to car shows and dreaming and wishing and hoping, someday we'd have our own. And I actually grew up racing motocross and derby. So we spent a lot of our weekends going across state racing dirt bikes. And when I got to be 13 years old, it was kind of the adult, the crest of, kind of youth racing into adult racing, and where you'd go from, the 80cc class to the 125 at the time, back when they were racing 2-strokes. Everything's gone 4-stroke in that sport. But, it got a lot more expensive. I remember my parents and I had a few injuries and concussions, and they're like, really, how much longer do you want to stay in dirt bike racing? And I came up with a great compromise that my dad immediately jumped onto. And I said, I tell you what, if we restore an old muscle car together, I'll get out of motocross. And so my dad and I spent a summer looking for cars, and we found this heap of junk up in Jeffersonville, Vermont. We paid $3,200 for it. Had no motor, no transmission, just a rolling chassis and a body, and it was a 1970 Chevelle. And we at that point we embarked on a 5-year restoration that really got it up and running it was actually just shortly after my 17th birthday that we got that thing on the road, and we've had it on the road the 15 years since.
If you've listened to these podcasts that we've been doing on a weekly basis, you will probably remember that the Chevelle is one of my favorite of all-time cars. I mean, I'm a big Mustang guy, but I always loved the Chevelle, the Oldsmobile 42s out there. Tell us the steps that along the way got you to where you are today with that Chevelle.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. We learned a lot on that project. The first year was just tearing out an old interior, really getting it down to bare metal, and then kind of planning what we were going to do for a build. And, you started, really building it from the frame up, and it's, suspension, brakes, things that people don't realize. You obviously got to put a drivetrain in it, get the, body, throw an interior in it, and each part took a while. I mean, if you had the money, you could do it fairly quickly. It's just you'd save up all summer. I'd work, whatever summer job I could, and My dad sold real estate part-time at the time, and whatever he'd earn for commissions, we'd put into the car. And so, one year we'd save up and we'd buy the suspension and the brakes, but that was $6,500 or $7,000. And so then you'd save up for another year and then spend it all in one fell swoop. But, it was, the work kind of centered all around that. We would go around to car shows, check things out, look for what we wanted to do. Obviously, we were lucky. We had a VIN number that was a Chevelle SS. And so while it's not numbers matching now, we wanted to build it to SS spec. So we put a 454 with LS6. Island Racing built us a beautiful motor that still runs great. And we're running close to 500 horsepower, almost 600 foot-pounds of torque. So we have a lot of fun with it. But, we tried to upgrade where we could, more modern and upgrade suspension, but built really kind of an original classic.
So would you say that you worked on the Chevelle on a weekly basis, a daily basis, or were there periods of time where you didn't work on it for 2 months?
Yeah, there certainly were periods of time where you didn't work on it for 2 months. And there's also times, I think, my dad and I, we'd lose something, or, I joke we might have thrown a wrench or two at each other during the process. But it was constant, figuring out what to do next. Sometimes you do something, you make a mistake, and you're like, oh geez, that was an expensive mistake, and you go back and redo things. But no, it really started to come. The first couple of years probably moved slower because we bought the car, bought the drivetrain, really just kind of got it to the point where it could be a running car. And then, just the pieces towards the end just, got, really expensive, but it also came together really quickly when we started, okay, we're going to go get it painted, and then we're going to throw the interior in. We really just wanted to be ready once the body and paint were done that we'd go. But we worked, with a local body guy who's not in business anymore. And I mean, we cut the thing at factory seams, put in new metal, there's very little, no Bondo except for, right where the weld might've been. We really brought it to a skeleton and rebuilt it. And, it's just amazing to think of, how it all went. And probably the last 6 months to a year, it was in the body shop, when they were getting the body work done and all that. And then even just the small pieces, like getting a working cowl induction hood, there's, I think, something like 82 parts or something, just small little vacuums that you had to look at the wiring diagram and piece together and figure out how that worked. We didn't have that in right when we got it on the road, but we just left it open, and then that winter figuring out all the little pieces and parts and making everything work. So
so there must have been a lot of research involved with this project. And how close did you want to get it to factory specs? Like 100%?
We did. I mean, there were certain things I didn't want to do. My VIN number said it would have been a maroon car. We ended up painting it a Fathom blue. Again, we had the 454. I think our VIN number would have been the LS5, not the LS6. But since we were into it and it wasn't exact, we were like, well, let's go build the big 454 and put the big one in. Upgrading suspension. That's kind of where we went. The interiors factory. Everything else is fairly factory down to the decals after you got the body work done to get the GM reproduction decals to put exactly where they were when you put it. There's modern things like an MSD ignition. We've got a more radiator with dual fans, more electric fans, different things that would help, the performance of the car. We run hooker headers through it, we'll upgrade with, the Holley carburetors, things that wouldn't have kind of come through, when we built the rear end, Detroit locker, the newer technology that you just couldn't beat, Coney suspension versus, a no-name brand. So
Wow. We're talking with former State Senator Corey Parent of St. Albans, Vermont, and he's telling us about his dad and his project car, Chevelle, which is on the road as we speak, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I always wondered if a car could talk. It sounds crazy, but I wish they would talk and tell us, where did you originate from? Where did you come from? Give us a little bit of history. Do you have any idea where this car originated from?
So the rumor from the guy we bought it from was it was out of Alabama. He bought it as a project car and then just kind of got into it, and like so many projects, just gave up. Something else came up, needed to put his money in, so we picked it up from there. So that's all I know of this car. But like I said, we've owned it 20 years now. It's a 53-year-old car, so you start to, they don't seem like they're that old, but
talking about cars that could talk. I don't know about you, but I love going to junkyards.
Yeah.
And I look at, even if it's an old station wagon from 1965, where did this car come from? What's the history on it? How many people owned it? Were there big families? All sorts of things run through my mind.
And you got to think, like, that Chevelle, while we've never driven it in the rain or in the snow, was somebody's daily driver in 1970, and that's what they took to work.
Yeah,
that's what
exactly.
They brought their family to church and on the weekend.
Yeah,
they
exactly.
got groceries in those cars. Right. So, yeah.
So it's your dad and yours car. I'm just going to ask who owns the majority of it.
Yeah, it's funny, as I've aged and finally got to an age where the insurance wasn't cost prohibitive. It's registered and insured in my name now.
Nice,
but for a while, my parents, I don't think, ever told the insurance they had a 17 and 18-year-old driving that car around town.
What the insurance companies don't know, that's not a bad thing sometimes. So did your dad still drive it?
Yeah, absolutely. I still keep it in his garage. He plays around with it. He has fun with it. Him and Mom take it to get creamies, and since I've had the kids, it's been a car that's been harder for me to get miles on, just because car seats don't go in it, and
right.
That's actually kind of what led me into my current project, is I can at least throw my 5-year-old's car seat in there. And I've taken him for a few rides and had fun. So,
ever take it to the State House in Montpelier, Vermont?
I never took the Chevelle down there. No, I didn't.
I'm sure you were real careful with it.
Yeah, that one's never really sat in parking lots or out all day. That's more of a, we've gone to car shows or go to dinner or go for a cruise.
Sure.
We like to, the Pine Cone usually does a nice car show up in Richford on Thursday nights. And so we do that a lot. We'd drive up on a Thursday night up there, look at some other beautiful Canadian cars coming down, and have a burger and head home.
You mentioned your dad had a few cars growing up. Was there a favorite of his or yours?
His was always a 66 Chevelle. That's actually what we looked for the longest time, was to rebuild a 66, but couldn't find any. And then the 70 came available, and we said, and I love the 70 now. It's my favorite year Chevelle because it's the one I own. But, that one, he always loved his Hearst olds, the 442, the Hearst dual gate shifter, all that he always talked about. So, that would be one I'm sure if he could find, he'd love to have.
What are you currently driving? Be honest.
Yeah, so I most of the time a 2022 GMC 2500, but the other part I just picked up from Sports Car USA, not kind of in the modern category, but on the brink of.
It's on the cusp, right there.
On the cusp, a 1990 Corvette that you guys gave me a pretty good deal on, and I've had a lot of fun with that. I actually just crossed 1,000 miles on it today.
Nice.
We bought it. I brought it to a local garage that focuses on muscle car and performance cars, and had them do a once over. And I said, here are my plans over the next 2 years, but I want to know, can I just drive it as is this summer? Is there anything we need to do to really make sure we're watching? And they're like, no, it's in great shape. And, I've had a lot of fun with that. We've already started tinkering with a few things here and there and got a few things on order. So, over the next year two, it'll be something fun that'll get added to the collection. And we've always loved Corvettes, my dad and I. He's never owned one. His brother had one, and this is our first one, so he's enjoyed it. And I don't think it'll be the last Corvette in our future. I've enjoyed that.
Well, thank you for buying a car from Sport Car USA.
Yeah, no problem.
You've been around a little bit. With Sport Car USA has been around a little bit, 2-3 years now. What's your impression about Sport Car USA?
Just an amazing, it's I always thought as a kid, like, you really couldn't, or at least up here, there wasn't a place to go buy, a muscle car or a sports car. That's why we looked to restore the Chevelle as we did. And, my dad and I were actually talking about my Corvette. Had a Sports Car USA been around when we got into the Chevelle project, we may not have built a Chevelle. We might have just gone up the road to a dealership. I mean, I'm glad we built the car, but sure is a heck of a lot easier to buy one off the showroom floor. And, they just have beautiful quality cars. I mean, I'm not a Mopar guy, but you look at, the Hellcats they have, you look at, the Mustangs, the Corvettes, you walk through that showroom and you wish all of them were yours. I know I couldn't work for Sports Car USA like you guys. I fall in love with each and every one of them.
Yeah.
And I'd probably break my heart to sell one.
It's not easy, let me tell you. Just not easy at all.
You sold a 2017 Corvette a few weeks ago, a white one with a red interior. And I loved that one. I was secretly hoping it wouldn't sell, that in a few years I could buy.
You let your dad drive your Corvette?
Yeah, he's taking it a bit. Yeah, he enjoys it. My mom actually even took her for riding it. She likes it. My 5-year-old absolutely loves it. and like I said, I've been taking it on the nice days as a commuter car. It runs great. It impresses me. It's, I never was in love with a C4 Corvette. I never said, oh, that's a car I have to have. But this winter I got itching for another project, and I saw that, and I approached the guys at Sports Car USA and said, I'm thinking about this as a project car, and we started talking about it and got a deal done. And so, I got my list. We'll do the upgrade. Kind of the radio doesn't work that well, but get that rolling so I can make phone calls for work because I'm on the road so much. And then there'll be I've talked to a few local interior places, and they're booked out about a year, but starting to get some designs down for that.
Nice.
We'll do a suspension upgrade. We'll probably do a brake upgrade, and from there, because it is running in such good shape, it'll probably be just cool air, some headers, and some performance exhaust to kind of push that closer to the 300 threshold, and then kind of be there. The body's in great shape. Like I said, the interior has a few tears, but you got to remember this. I was talking to someone this morning. It's got 120,000 miles on it. Like, oh, that seems high mileage. You go, like 3,500 miles a year.
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean? When you're talking,
back it out. Yeah,
back it out. That car was fairly babied for most of its life. Now you wouldn't think anything of a car that only drove 3,500 miles. And if you go into the right perspective, it's a nice car. We bought. One thing I noticed when I first bought it, the headlights are like my Chevelle. They're not great, but now you can buy the LED remix. So we threw those in. I just wasn't planning on buying them this early, but caught them on Father's Day sale. A new set of...
Give it to your wife. Yeah. It's Father's Day, honey.
Well, she doesn't know yet.
Oh, okay. Hope she doesn't listen to this podcast.
But, a pair of rims that fit that size, but blacks, C7 style that'll go against like a red caliper. So it'll be a fun little car that will be what it is. And once we get it done, then I'm sure I'll be poking around for the next one.
Yeah, we're gonna have you on another podcast to tell us
like
everything you've done to it.
Keeps growing. Yeah, no, I'm having a blast with it, and that's how I think you gotta take them. I mean, what I do outside for a living is running a lot of analysis and making sure things make financial sense. Here, it's more of a piece of art and what you can do with it. And I don't ever intend on selling this one. I was born in 1990, and I think that's kind of why I liked it. It was the year I was born. Sure. Neat little car. Yeah. Price was right to get into it, and then what I was looking about what I'd want to do to it. All in at a fairly reasonable cost, and have a fun car to play with.
Yeah, you certainly do. One of the great things about Sport Car USA is that we are located in northern Vermont. I mean, we're 15 minutes away from Canada, 15 minutes away. And we wanted to establish Sport Car USA as a national entity.
Yeah.
And I think we've done that in little old St. Albans, Vermont. We want everyone who wants a modern muscle car, no matter where you live in the country and beyond, to know that sportcarusa.com, you're going to find what you're looking for, or
it's beautiful cars. I mean, like I said, it's interesting since I bought it. I've really gotten into the Corvette market much more, watching what's going on. And you guys got an 08 Corvette, the best price in the country of what I've seen for that. Mileage, condition, all that. It's like, man, if I was made of money and could just buy car after car, you're like, oh, maybe that'd be the next one, or this would be one after that. So no, you guys, great price. Not trying to help you sell here, but when you look around, and then just the quality, the sheer number, where are you going to go? You've got, like I said, that one Mopar, you've got, with less than 300 miles or 400 miles on it, 707 horsepower. That alone just gets you thinking, I love the classics, but you can't beat that technology and the ride. And
you're a car enthusiast. You aren't necessarily a Chevy person or a Ford person or a Mopar person, but when you see these vehicles,
and the more I grow in it, the more I appreciate, and I think of the Vette I have now. 17-year-old Corey with his Chevelle would have been like, nah, not my thing.
Right.
You couldn't pay me to take that. And now you're like, you know what? It's not the best, highest performance Corvette. It's not this, but for what it was and in its time, that Corvette that year was faster than the Ferrari that year, production year. You've got, the technology. I mean, you're sitting in there, 1990. So you frame it up. It's telling you your average mileage. It's digital speedometer. It's it's got a CD player, which 1990s early for CD players. You look at that one has a sticker on it, came out of California. that car for its time was way ahead of the curve. And, and now we look at it and go, well, you know, it is what it is. But, you know, just think back 33 years ago, that's what we think of the C8 today or anything on the road. You know, that was the car. And so, you know, it's really neat. And I mean, the handling on it, you know, for, again, the age, I mean, I take it around them sharp, you know, clover turns there on the interstate exit at a pretty quick pace. That's one of my favorite, because you can't hit top end in a lot of places legally. So
legally,
I found I like to hit corners pretty quickly and see how a car handles, and that one just sticks right to the road. So it's and I haven't even upgraded it yet. And I'm just like, wow, you know, it's all there. You know, so when you think of the era, you know, you think of my Chevelle in 1970 when they put out 450 horsepower, you know, without, you know, they didn't have fuel injection, they didn't have, you know, all the stuff that they have today, and you're like, wow, that was just pure muscle. And you know, and that's, you know, they didn't supercharge them, they just built them that way. And you know, it's amazing for those eras. So I think if you appreciate the era the car was built in, compared to today, how far ahead it was, like, you can find something to love just about any car.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And you're right, when you're growing up, you look at the cars, you mentioned a couple already, they don't mean anything to you. So then you get to be your age, my age, which I'm a lot older than you, but you see like maybe a tape of something 20, 30, 40 years ago. And it's like, wow, I'd love to have that car right there. Yeah. And you go to car shows, and I get excited when I see a Pinto or a Vega or something crazy, a Falcon, that I would never want to buy, but they're there and they look brand new because they've been restored. Yeah, I mean, I think of that like the 80s Trans Ams. That would have been nothing. I would have been like, turned my nose up and like, ugh, you know. But now I look at them and I go, wow, it's beautiful for what it is in its era. You look at, you know, just a ton of different things, and you know, you're like, wow, you know, that was actually a nice looking car. And and looking back, and like I said, you know, just the eras change, and so. You know, I think if you just look at it through that lens, you can find so much to love about them. And, you know, and the new cars have their own piece, and, you know, just the comfort, you know, that's the biggest thing I find. Like, you know, the Chevelle, if you go 200 miles in a Chevelle in a day, you feel it. My Corvette's a little bit better, but I bet, you know, you get in a new C8 Corvette and you go up to Maine and back, like, you know what I mean? It's a different feel. And I think that's really what's progressed over time, just the technology and, you know, the comfort that a lot of these cars have. We won't even talk about EVs, not on this podcast. We don't need those right now. We love the modern muscle cars. We love muscle cars in general. And Corey, I think that you should drive my 2020 C8, and I should drive your Corvette. Yeah, just for an hour or two. Yeah. See how they go. We can compare, right? Yeah, I get a better deal on that one. I don't know about that. I can't wait to see your modifications on your Corvette. Yeah. We want to thank you, Corey Parent, for coming in today. Corey from St. Albans and a former state senator. It's been a real pleasure having you. Love the stories about you and your pops. And I think there's going to be a few more cars in your future. I can just tell. I think so. And my son really likes them. And so, you know, hopefully, you know, my daughter, as she grows, maybe she'll fall in love with them like he seems to be. And maybe it'll become just a long-term family affair. All right. I love it. I want to thank everybody for listening to our podcast, the Test Drive Podcast. I'm your host, Lee Bodette. Check out our Test Drive series on YouTube, and we'll see you next time on our Test Drive Podcast. And remember, let's never forget the men and women serving this great country of ours. Goodbye, everybody.